Wonderful. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Career Week. My name is Ellie Garrity, and I'm the Director of Alumni Career Programs with the Alumni Association. We're so excited that you're able to join us for Career Week and for today's session, Advanced Interviewing for Hiring Managers, asking better questions to find the right candidates with alumna Meredith Masse. This webinar will be recorded, so by participating, you acknowledge and consent to your image, likeness, or voice being recorded. For those of you who plan to use closed captioning, please click the CC button on the bottom of your Zoom panel. We have a lot of information to cover today, but we will take questions throughout the presentation, so feel free to throw those in the chat box when you're ready. Now, about our presenter. For more than 15 years, Meredith Masse, class of 91, has helped people on both sides of the interview desk ask better questions to ensure a great new hire fit. While you shouldn't scrap the typical "so tell me about yourself" or "what's your greatest strength" inquiries, there's a more effective way to ensure you're narrowing your applicant list to those individuals who are ready for the role. So I'm going to pass it over to Meredith. She can tell us a little bit more about herself and get the presentation started. Go ahead, Meredith.
Well, thank you so much, Ellie. It's so fun to be here. I was silent or sort of hoping that maybe we could have been in person this year to give me an excuse to travel back to the UMCP. It's been a while. It's been a hot minute. I am Meredith Masse, and back in the day, gosh, we had to put our class years, didn't we? Back in the day, it was Meredith Marsh. And, you know, I thought just for fun, I could admit to what it was really like in the late 80s and 90s in College Park. So yes, this is then and now. So a little bit about me that you can read. The more professional pieces of it is that we moved from the Washington, D.C. area in 2005. And my family and I have lived in Colorado since then. It is freezing cold today and snowing, so there's that. But I have worked for the last several years, let's not do the math, in consulting in some form or another. And no matter what official role I hold, I do consider myself a career coach, and I have a little side gig doing career coaching for mid-level, I should say mid-life career professionals who are trying to figure out what they want to be next. In that practice, we talk a lot about what are the questions you're going to ask as a candidate to know if the place that you're speaking to is a great fit for you. And I've got a model that I use with clients that we're going to flip on its head today, and we're going to look at that through the lens of the hiring manager. I don't want to give too much away just yet, but that's our plan. So away we go. Oh, thank you, Keisha. Slept in coal for basketball tickets too. I love it. I'm not the only one. But before we get started, one thing I do want to know is a little bit about you all. So Ellie, if you don't mind launching that first poll, I'd love to know, what about you guys? What's your role? Are you the hotshot hiring manager, a human resources pro, internal talent acquisition ace, external recruiter, a student whiz? Ooh, something else entirely. Right on. Perfect. A few HR peeps. One student, yay you! You're going to learn how to anticipate what they're going to ask you when it's time to interview. So we've got a few hiring managers, one HR person. Okay, if it's something else entirely because you're the vast majority, I want to know more about that. So you could put that in the chat. I'd love to hear more about who's on today. And like Ellie said, please ask your questions in the chat. Ellie's going to try to keep an eye on that. I will too, but you know, trying to look through your pictures, the chat, and some slides, you can imagine that that's a lot to juggle. So we can try to manage this as best we can. If you know how to raise your hand in Zoom, do that too, and that, I think that should put your spotlight right up front so that we can see that you've got a question, and we might even be able to take you off mute. So thanks, and thank you for letting me know in the chat a little bit more about who's here today. Speaking of today, why are we here? We're going to start with this idea of asking better questions, that it starts with what, why, and where. And I'm going to share this model with you guys that you can take away to think through, again, how to ask better questions to elicit the kinds of responses that you need to hear in order to know, is this someone that's worth interviewing again or someone worth hiring? I'll talk a little bit about, some of those general questions that let's face it, if you're anything like me, we all love to fall back on, versus questions that are more behavior-based. There are lots of statistics that tell us that behavior-based questions, asking about how did you handle a similar situation previously, is a much better predictor of how someone might handle it going forward. And then I'm going to give you the step-by-step, that roadmap to constructing better questions so that you can indeed get those better answers. And then hopefully we'll have a little time towards the end and we can practice. I'm going to try my best to save time at the end for Q&A, but oh my goodness, please do not wait until the bitter end. Chat in your questions. Ellie, you let me know when something really juicy comes up. And if you want to raise your hand, if you know how to do that in Zoom, you can raise your hand and we can try to address some of your questions live. What we are not going to talk about today is those interview do's and don'ts that can keep you out of the courtroom. That is not my specialty. And I absolutely 100% suggest you reach for your nearest HR expert for those questions that, are the big no-nos. Today, it's all about just figuring out, how do I ask better questions to gauge if this person is a good fit? And we're going to talk about this idea of fit as we go. So with my job seeker clients, I use this model that I developed more than 10 years ago to help them figure out what the next ideal role looks like versus looking at your resume like I did for a very long time, saying, well, this is what I can do, so I guess this is what I'm stuck with. And this gives job seekers a decision filter, if you will, to make better decisions about the jobs that they're applying to. We start with the what. What is their strengths, their current skills, their experience, what they do best and what they love to do. Then we talk about their why. What does meaningful work look like to you? Because I truly believe that we all want meaningful work. It's just a matter of defining what that is for each and every individual, because it's as unique as every person. And then the idea of where. What is the best environment, culture, etc., that allows me to get to do what I do best for something that I care about? So today we're going to flip that, like I said, flip it on its head so that you can use this same model for finding the best candidates who are capable of performing what you need them to do. So do they have the right skills? Do they have the right strengths? Do they share, do you share a why? Is your organization's or your team's why something that they can buy into? And is that a match, if you will? And then absolutely the where. This is where, for so many years we talk about fit. Does this person fit? Well, in this day and age, we also want to keep in mind who could be a culture add? What's missing on my team that I could hire for? What, if we're all very serious, do we need someone who has a little bit of a sense of humor? Richard, we're looking at you. If we're all silly and crazy, do we need someone to balance that out? So from a cultural perspective, as well as really, a team perspective, if there are missing talents on the team or missing strengths on the team, missing skills on the team, what does that add look like? Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Let's talk about the different kinds of questions. And, the ones that we're used to are very general. They are the general questions. I often refer to them as traditional interview questions. So tell me a little bit about yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What skills do you have that you can bring to this organization? What's your preferred working style? These are not bad questions. And just like Ellie said, I'm not suggesting that we throw these away entirely, especially the questions that help us to get to know the candidate. Obviously, again, without needing to run them, not sending them running to HR saying, I can't believe she asked me what year I graduated high school. So always make sure that you check in with your HR. I love my HR friends. Check in with your HR peeps to make sure that the questions that you have planned aren't no-nos. The challenge with these kinds of questions, of course, is that they can absolutely prompt a, well, here's what I would do. And those answers or responses can be constructed in a way if the interviewer is really trying to get into, what does this hiring manager want to hear? Now, let me tell you that for the first probably 15 years of my post-college professional life, I was a really good interviewer. And I could nail an interview and get the job because I spent most of my time figuring out, as a journalism PR major, on one side of my cap, we talked about who's your audience and talk to your audience in journalism. If anybody's in marketing, you've done that too. So I was really focused on telling them what I thought they wanted to hear, even when it wasn't entirely authentic. I never lied, but when someone would ask something about, well, tell us about how you stay organized. Oh, I am very organized. Well, how about attention to detail? I have such an amazing attention to detail. Those two statements could be no further from the truth. I have learned techniques over time to keep myself organized. And I am a huge believer in pulling in my peeps who are, very detail oriented to proof my work and proofread my work. But all of this to say that when we stick to very general questions, they might be able to read between the lines. And if they've done their homework and they've worked with a good career coach, they will know what questions to anticipate and can sneak in that, well, here's how I would do it. What we really want to know is, how have you done it in the past? Because that's a little bit more of an indicator of how you will do it in the future, or how the candidate would do it in the future. So taking these broad questions and making them lots more specific and behavior-based. The HR folks on the call and anyone who's in, recruiting or talent acquisition probably knows what the behavior-based interview looks like. The benefits here are that more specific behavior-based questions, that we can probe a little further into, prompt the response of, well, here's how I've done it in the past. Here's how I tackled a similar challenge in my previous role. When you know that or hear that from them, you have a much better idea of how they will likely tackle the same thing under your purview and on your team. And what we're trying to do is elicit specific behaviors that are directly related to what you're trying to hire for. Now let's be for real. Having a conversation about, so what are your strengths and weaknesses? So, how do you like to work? It feels a little more conversational and it's more comfortable. The problem is it doesn't help us get specific information. It also doesn't take a lot of prep time. When we talk about the behavior-based approach, it absolutely takes some serious preparation. And I'm going to take you through steps that you can go through on your own the next time that you need to do this. But it is a slightly better predictor of future performance. In fact, one statistic says 55% better predictor when you can hone in on behavior-based questions versus, hire them and then go ask about the kids and the dogs and what do you like to do after work. Makes sense? Ellie, I'm going to pause here for just 1 second. Are there any questions that have come up?
No questions, just some great comments that are aligning with some of what you're saying. Lisa tells us that she always says past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. Richard gave us some more insight. He managed the budget for the EPA, serious business, but still wanted to have fun. So yeah, that's all we have coming through. So I think folks just agreeing with you so far. So I think we're good to continue on.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Thanks, Lisa. I appreciate your weighing in there as well. All right. So let's launch our second poll. And I just love to hear from you a little bit about, how comfortable you are with this. Like what is your comfort level in asking the best questions to qualify job candidates? Richard, we're going to have a little fun here. You try to be objective. Good. I can select the right candidate every time would be sort of on the high end. On the low end, it's you scratching your head thinking, wait, who put me in charge? Why am I the one doing the interviewing? Somewhere in the middle, well, if we could be friends, I'll hire him. Awesome. Whew. I can select the right candidates every time. A couple of you, maybe you should be leading the charge here. I'm hoping that the two of you will pipe in here in the chat for sure. So I love it, you guys working so hard to try to be objective. And I also love the person who is being either funny or fully authentic about, I don't have a clue necessarily what I'm doing. Why did they put me in charge of this? Thank you. So let's work on some ways to help you be even more objective, at least in terms of the questions you're asking and how you're asking them. I'm quickly point out that I believe someone is maybe off of mute and we can hear a little bit of background noise. So if you wanted to just double check and make sure you're on mute, that would be fantastic. Okay, let's talk about a path that we can take and a process. It's super high level here, but a process that you can use to construct better questions. First, we want to keep in mind that look how much time we're going to spend on understanding the job requirements in this timeline, if this is a timeline, right? And we start with, my controls will, guess what? The what. So when you take that, now, caveat, this is taking a little bit for granted that you've got a great job description to work with. and that you know the role inside and out. So what does this job really require? What needs to get done? How does it need to get done? And when I say how here, I mean more about the processes and maybe the technologies versus the how do I get great work done with my colleagues. That comes in a minute. What are there specific qualifications? Degrees, certifications, especially in the tech world. Maybe I noticed somebody is an accountant by trade. Do they have the right accounting certifications? And then looking for what are the outcomes and those key result areas that this person or this role is responsible for producing. And we have to be really, really clear on exactly what it takes to be successful in this role. The next one is, of course, the why. What's the company's why? What's the team's why? And when I say why, I'm talking about some of those posters on the wall: vision, mission, values. We just recently spent some time with a treasury team that had never truly thought about why do we exist within this company. Like they understood on a surface level, well, we're responsible for X, Y, and Z. Well, yes, but why? Why is that important? So make sure you spend a little time thinking about, if you're the hiring manager, what is your team's why? What does your team exist to do within the greater organization? And why is that important? What do we believe? And in this case, if you've heard of Simon Sinek, I would, and if you haven't, I would recommend that you look up his TED Talk about the golden circle. And he's talking about the why, and I'm talking about the heart why. Like, why do I get out of bed every morning to come and do this? It's the so what question. Because at the end of the day, someone who will be motivated, stay motivated, be more engaged in the work is someone who also believes in what you believe in, what the company's values are, what the team's values are, and that there's some crossover there. Next is the where. And this one is huge. This is between what and where. These are kind of the two meatiest categories. Like, why is super important, but it's the definition is pretty simple. The where is everything from, where are we going to put them, and will they be comfortable there? Will they be able to be productive? What does the physical environment look like and feel like? And is it something that accommodates their success? It's, do they have to commute a gajillion hours? I did that in the DC area for far too many years, and that took a toll. So if you're thinking about environment, and someone is commuting, do you have the flexibility to allow them to work from home a few days a week, if and when we ever go back to an office? Who are the people that this role needs to interact with? And this is where we talk about, will they mesh? Do they fit in? And what about them is unique that can add something to our team? Whether it's a culture add, a personality add, a skills and strengths add. Thinking about that where in advance and knowing what the position needs, the team needs for someone to be, that perfect square peg in the square hole. Once we've done, we could call this a very, by a formal name, a job requirements analysis. But it's really just taking time with the job description and knowing what you know about what makes someone successful in that role. Then and only then do we embark on this journey of developing interview questions, and which would eventually, of course, getting us to conducting the interviews. This is lopsided on purpose because the more time you spend up front planning and preparing and developing better interview questions, the more likely you are to have an easier time discerning who the great candidates are. Excuse me, I have to keep moving my controls. Here's one way to think about it. And this is, admittedly, this is absolutely a technique that I use with job seekers too, to help them prepare for your behavior-based questions. We call it the CAR method. Maybe you've heard of the STAR method, but it's a way to think about how you ask your questions to get what you need to hear. The C stands for challenge or circumstance. So think about challenges this person will need to be tackling in the role that you're hiring for. Think about where the team or where the role is currently, and what do they need to, what are they stepping into? And what do they need to be able to produce in that environment? So for example, describe a time when you had to manage numerous responsibilities. So you're asking that question because you know that the person who will be successful in the role you're hiring for needs to be a master juggler, because they're, no 2 days look the same. There are constant competing priorities. Multiple projects going on in various degrees of completion at any given time. If it's someone who serves an internal audience, you're working with various different departments and have to be able to weigh the priorities of your internal customers. Make sense so far? Cool. The A is for action. So your first question will be, describe a time when you had to manage numerous responsibilities. Again, if the interviewee has worked with a good career coach, they're going to know that this is the next natural flow in this process. If you're not hearing from them, well, and here's what I did, then the next question you ask is related to the actions that they took. What did you do about that? How did you handle it? What steps did you take? Because you want to get at how they approached solving the problem, making the decision, taking action on whatever the challenge or circumstance was. Again, if they've worked with, and I know so many universities, and probably University of Maryland too, in the career centers are helping job applicants prepare these kinds of responses. If they aren't giving you what you need to be ready to probe a little bit. Because at the end of the day, what we want to know is, and what happened as a result of you doing what you did in that particular challenge or circumstance, what was the outcome? Now, this is where it can get a little, what's the word I'm looking for? It might feel inviting to say things like, and how were you successful? Or and how did you, what happened? Did you reach your goal? My suggestion is try really hard to restrain from leading them to what you want to hear, and instead leaving it very open-ended and very just matter of fact, to the point. So what happened? What was the outcome? If you're asking a question around, describe a time when you made a mistake, hopefully you hear the result, and another follow-on question could be, and what did you learn about that? Because isn't that what we want to know? We all make mistakes. It's what did you learn and what did you put in place to hopefully have that not happen again? What questions? I'm going to pause a bit
We have
here.
a question in the chat. Sorry, Meredith, I didn't mean
Yes,
to
yeah.
jump in. We have a question from Benjamin. What are your thoughts on a combination of general and behavioral questions? And he gives an example, like how do you approach conflict, and provide an example.
I love that question, Benjamin. And like I said, I'm not suggesting that you scrap those more general questions. Sometimes those can be the ones that put you and the interviewee at ease, so that they feel a little more comfortable starting to chat and share with you. If you know that there are some, I'll take your conflict resolution example. If you know that this person or the person in the role that you're hiring for will need to manage potential conflict situations because some of the folks that they work with are a little tough, they're get into the behavior-based questions with those. Tell me about a time when you had to work with someone you didn't agree with. What'd you do? What was the outcome? Tell me about a time when you had a conflict with your supervisor. What did you do? How did you handle that? What actions did you take? What was the outcome?
Those
Does
are
that make
helpful reframing questions. I feel like we had something else from Lisa. She appreciates what you said about not leading them to a response. I as well was like, oh my gosh, I do that all the time. She says she's a generous interviewer and fears that she does that too often. So a question that I have to that, if you're looking for a certain thing to write down, potentially like saying that, I'm interviewing Lisa and I want to hear her say, and I was able to, connect X alumni in X amount of programs throughout the year through, her response in this CAR method. If she doesn't give me that, am I just under the assumption that she didn't do all her homework as someone who was going to interview, that she should have known to give that response? Or, how do you know when to cut the generosity off?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I say, think of it as an upside down funnel. Start pointed with this idea of tell me about a time when, like we're getting straight to the point. And if as you probe and they're not answering what you think you're asking, then by all means, as you work down that pyramid, ask the question of, well, I'm really curious to hear about, how many programs did you run? What were the results? How many attendees did you get? I think that's fine. I hear what you're saying. And I love Lisa's comment about, I'm pretty generous. I am too. Like, I want everyone to be successful, and here's what it looks like. But if you really want to know if this is a good person, like for the job versus someone that you want to have dinner with, we have to ask some of these tougher questions to figure out how they're going to be on your team. But does that make sense, Ellie, what I said about, start with this idea of tell me about a time when, yeah. And because it's left a little bit up to interpretation, of course, they might be able to take it one way or another. If you're trying to get to a specific thing they did or outcome that they produced, keep probing, leaving it as not leading as possible. And if at some point you say, look, really what I want to know is, did you do programs like this? And what was the attendance?
Mhm.
Then go there if you need to. Um,
Thank you. I
so
appreciate that. We got a
yeah,
question from Chang about career coaching. And Chang, I will give you Meredith's information. I think she could chat with you about career coaching specifically maybe after this presentation. But great question about kind of when to connect with a career coach. So I'll make sure that you two can connect on that. But otherwise, Meredith, I think you're good to continue on.
All right. So we've got the car model. This is how we develop we think about what, why, and where, and develop these car related questions using this behavior based idea to ask to make sure that we're getting the right person in the right seat. So let's practice because we have plenty of time to do this. I'm so glad that we got here. Here's a job description for a customer service representative. Now, this is a mishmash of several. So please don't go out and try to figure out who's hiring because it's not a specific company. And I want you to take, I'll do a timer for about 60 seconds. And I want you to read through and think about what are those salient points that help you know what does this job require? What is this company and this team's why? And what clues do you get about the where in the environment? So I'm going to be quiet and let you guys read. I'm going to turn on a quick timer. All right, that's a 10-second countdown. Okay. This is where I expect to see chats flying. What are some of the things that you notice that are requirements for this job? What is the what of this job? Go ahead and chat those in. Customer service, customer service. Just make this so I can see more. Can-do attitude. Oh, hi, Karina. Patience, dealing with angry or irritated customers. Yep, managing conflicts or difficult situations. High school diploma, professional, positive attitude. Understanding the products, comfortable with technology. Cool. Let's start with the what. You've done a great job of your job requirements analysis. Now, knowing that they need to be comfortable with technology, they need to understand the product's service portfolio. There's a focus on detail, dealing with sometimes unhappy customers. Let's practice in the chat. around what's that first question you want to ask. Because if you say, tell me about your attention to detail, very general. What am I going to say? Well, Meredith from several years ago would say, oh, I'm very detail oriented. And so what's a better behavior-based question? And one trick is it can always start with, tell me about a time when. And you take your pick of one of these job requirements that you want to start a question around. Listen, there are no wrong answers. So don't be shy. Tell me about a time when you had a customer that was not happy and what you did. What was the result? Thanks, Allison. It's literally that simple. What did you do? Now, you could, if you're like me, you're tempted to say, what did you do to resolve their complaint? Well, you don't know if they resolved their complaint. Tell me about a time when you had an unhappy customer. How did you address it? And then be quiet. And then what was the result? Let's take another one. That's excellent. Allison, high five, gold star. How do you go about making sure your work is high quality, accurate, and free of errors? Lisa, you're totally on the right track. How about if we tweak it just a little bit? Tell me about a time when you had an important deliverable that you knew had to be high quality, accurate, and free of errors. What did you do? What did you do? Look, even here, I'm going to go there. What did you do to ensure that? No. What did you do? What were the results? Imagine if they say, I combed over it and I proofread 17 times and I caught lots of stuff and I fixed it and I sent it on and it was perfect and we won the client or whatever. If you were asking me that question, my answer would be very different. So you're really going to get in to see how their brains work to produce an end result or a final product that's high quality, accurate, and free of errors. For me, it's 100% every time somebody else or three have to proofread it. Every time. That's great. Do you see the nuance, how we flipped it a little? Instead of how would you, how have you? Sarah, tell me about a time when you had to learn a new piece of technology, right? Because I love that for so many reasons. Number one, we're only saying in the job description that you have to be comfortable with technology. Now, let's face it, if we had more space, maybe the job description or the job posting would list all the different technologies that we hope you have some familiarity with. But this is, especially if they don't have familiarity with the piece of technology that you're going to require them to use, this is such a great way. Tell me about a time when you had to learn a new piece of technology. What did you do to learn it? I went to class, I did LinkedIn Learning, I went to the computer lab at University of Maryland. Perfect. Carmen, how do you typically learn all about new products? Tell me about a time where you might have faced challenges of becoming a product expert and how did you overcome? Carmen has hit the jackpot. Because look, you're leading it off with that a little bit more general and then telling them exactly what you want them to tackle. How do you typically learn? In fact, tell me about a time when you had to learn and you had some challenges learning. What did you do? I mean, 2 gold stars for Carmen today. All right, we've done a darn good job on the what. Let's move to the where. What do we know about the where? What clues do we have about where? Remember, the where is everything from, the place where I sit, to the people I work with, to the general atmosphere and culture. What do we know about the where at Acme Products? Hip, yep, whatever that, that's their word. That makes me think of an environment that's not buttoned down, like the exact opposite of buttoned down, conservative. What else do we know about the where? What do we know about the colleagues? Yeah, rock star. Yep. Potential. Yes, high performers in that we're all devoted to something together. That we'll get to that in the why. So positive, are they positive or negative people? Hopefully positive. If I'm required to maintain a positive, empathetic, and professional attitude, my guess is that the people I work with are positive, empathetic, and professional. What about the pace of work in this job? Is it slow and steady? Testudo wins the race? Yeah, fast-paced. Respond to customer inquiries with lightning speed. Okay, let's try to come up with one or two questions, behavior-based questions that we can ask to know if you fit this profile of someone who can work fast, pace is fast, and also expectation that the candidate keeps up on new information with a smile. Yep, Polly, spot on. I love your summary. So tell me about a time when what? To know if this is the kind of atmosphere that they can thrive in. And if we want to get a little more general, we can. General in our behavior questions. How about tell me about a time when you had to work with a colleague, like you partnered with a colleague that you had very different personalities. Now, maybe you're both positive, empathetic, and professional, but maybe they approach their work a little bit differently than you, right? So tell me about a time when you had to work with a colleague who was very different from you. What did you do? You're going to see in a question like that, like, how do they adapt? How do they work as a team with someone who's maybe not their favorite person on the planet? Tell me about a time when your day got off to a not great start and you knew you still had to come to work and perform like we do here with a positive attitude and empathetic. What did you do? How, in other words, we're not going to ask this, but how did you get your head back on? How do you manage yourself? Okay, last one. We talked about the where. Now, how about the why? What are some of the clues that we see about the why for this team and this organization? What gets them out of bed every day? What do we know about their purpose and their mission? Cool client projects. Oh, tell me about a time when you were really inspired by the work you were doing. Oh, look at you, Polly, jumping straight ahead. 3 gold stars for Polly. That's awesome. Yes, when you were really inspired. And that's going to give you a clue into like what motivates them and what do they love to work on. And you could probe even further about why, well, what did you do? What kind of results did you produce? And I'm trying not to give away an answer to an example that I have on the next slide. So I'm going to stop there for a second. That's awesome. So hopefully you guys at least sort of see the recipe that we're trying to build here. And you plug and play the ingredients based on what you're trying to get at. Whether it's it's the what they do, their technical skills, functional skills, etc., the why they do it, and making sure that values align and they're going to be on board with your purpose and vision, mission, and the where. From, is this a place? Is the atmosphere, the environment, something that will elicit getting the best performance out of you? You guys all did so well, straight A's across the board. I thought that just in case the class was not as brilliant as you all are, I thought I better have some examples. So in this case, describe a time you dealt with an unhappy customer. What specific actions did you take? What was the outcome for that customer? Trying to keep it as non-leading as possible. Why? Tell me about the proudest moment in your professional career so far. Polly, you and I were like synced on this one. What did you do to achieve that success? What was the outcome for the company, for you? And here's my bonus. How is this meaningful to you? You're going to get some really good insights into what drives that individual when you ask a question like that. Last but not least, the where. Tell me about a time when you had to build a rapport with a coworker or client whose personality was different. How did you handle that? What happened? So when you think about, you can think about, the skills, the why, the where, sort of those overall, to use an HR term, competencies. We know that a great performer looks like this. Now, what do I need to ask in the interviews to know who the right person is for the job? I'm going to pause here before we close. We've got just 5 little minutes left. Any final questions before I ask one final closer? I will say this, as you're thinking about what you want to ask, I truly appreciate everyone participating. I know, we're in starting year 3 of this business of weird working situations, and appreciate you all hopping on yet another Zoom and sharing your time and hopefully learning a little bit. So as you formulate your questions, go ahead and type them in the chat and we'll try to address those in the waning moments. But I have one final question for you all. You ready? My final question is, who's going to win the game tonight? Go Terps, go Terps. And this is women. I know our men already crushed Rutgers last night. Whoop, whoop. But don't forget, the women are like still ranked, people. We got to give them our love. Yeah,
Fabulous.
Terps.
Everyone's
Yeah,
really
Terps.
excited about the Terps playing tonight. That's amazing.
In fact, what I should have done, Ellie, was who's going to win? Maryland. Maryland will win.
You know, Meredith and I did practice this on one of our calls, so I'm so glad she was able to get her cheer on. Meredith, I just want to thank you. I think everything in the chat I've seen so far is just thanking you for your awesome presentation and some shout outs to the Terps and hoping everyone, hoping we win tonight. I want to say a huge thank you to Meredith for walking us through this. I loved the structure of that. It was really helpful to formulate my own questions and do that in real time with you. And I hope everyone else on this call feels the same way. Meredith has put up her slide with her email address on it, so you can contact her this way. I've also been shouting her out on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with her if that's okay, Meredith, on LinkedIn. And then this presentation is being recorded, so it'll be uploaded to our Career Week YouTube playlist, and you can access that at any time if you want to come back and look at any of the great stuff that Meredith went over today. But that is all I have on my end. Meredith, I'll turn it over to you if you have any last comments to make, and then we can wrap things up.
Well, I'll just say if you obviously access the recording if you'd like. If for some reason you'd like a copy of the slides, just shoot me a quick email and I'll send you all a PDF to help, if you want that to refer back to as you're formulating your next interview questions. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate everyone's time. Go Terps!
Yeah, I was hoping you'd end it that way. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day, rest of your week, and we will all see you soon. Thanks again, Meredith.
Bye.
Bye.